Amy, hi.
Hi, I'm so excited to talk about sex
Yes.
at 8:30 a.m. Pacific.
Well, it's 11:30 here, but I'm just as excited.
It's like when you were drinking and you were waiting till noon.
Right.
We can talk about sex now.
It's time. It's time. Yeah, I mean, I'm super pumped. I'm super excited. I remember I told you when we first met, that I'd been begging Petra to do an episode on sober sex with me, and she was like, I don't know. And then the universe just brought you into my life. So now we're going to have a sober sex conversation. It's going to get on the channel, and we're going to, hopefully give the viewers some feedback on the questions that they've asked, and then touch on other topics that we both know people are thinking about, but just aren't really saying out loud. Because for whatever reason, sex is still kind of considered like taboo in a lot of parts of our society, and it's still a little bit uncomfortable to talk about, unless you're you, in which it's extremely comfortable to talk about.
I do love talking about it. And, something that I want to just say right off the bat is that if there has been any sexual trauma in your past, and you're feeling triggered, or you're feeling some kind of way in your body, you can pause the video, you can come back to it, you can ask us questions, because that's often what's happening. It's like, this is activating some old stuff. Maybe I've never told anyone, all this stuff. So I kind of want to get the serious stuff, and just that, we hold space for everyone. Everyone is welcome here.
Absolutely.
However you identify, all of the things. Like, this is a very open, you and I get it. We're here to support. And whatever you've experienced, it's okay. And, pause it when you need to, come back when you need to, ask questions. And we're here to support you through this conversation and to have some fun while we're talking about it. Because we heal through play, we heal through pleasure, and we heal with one another.
Oh, I love that so much. I couldn't have said it any better myself. All right. Well, with that, why do you think there is so much mystery around sober sex?
Gosh.
Because no, nothing.
Yeah, it's a great question, because what about you? I mean, I just asked this question not too long ago. Like, who taught you about sex?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, it was kind of like, I remember when I was like, probably whenever the L Word came out, like 10 or 11 years old, and we didn't even have the channel. So, at a point when you didn't have a channel, but you can still kind of see what was going on, I would watch it at like 3 a.m. on Showtime through static, just like trying to see, because it was the only access I had to like woman on woman sex. So it was like, and I didn't even know yet. Like, I knew, but I didn't know. That was really like a big part of it for me, because I realized, this stuff turns me on. Like, this is really interesting to me. And it was scary, and I was like lowering the volume so my parents wouldn't hear it. And it was just totally secret, on top of what media was showing me or what I was seeking out. Like, I was at a point with the internet that there wasn't any of this. I feel so old saying that. There wasn't Tinder, there wasn't anything to meet other women. It didn't exist. So the very small communities that I could find, I was active with, but it was people from like all over the world. So I was kind of on my own little learning journey, a lot from the internet and a lot from TV shows. And then obviously whatever my parents mirrored without me really realizing that's what they were showing me about it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so beautiful, because that's what so many people, and then the generations before you, right? We didn't even have television shows showing us this stuff yet, right? And there was definitely no, same sex or, any talk of, not even claiming a sex, right? Like, so that was just, so we learned a lot of things in dark rooms and private and secret, especially when we started exploring things. And that's why the scene from that time was so much in bars. Right. So now,
absolutely.
And even with heterosexual sex, it was like that, it was just like, this is not to be talked about. Right. And so then there's that whole kind of religious trauma that happens and trickles down as well. Like, button up, we don't talk about that. It's just for procreation. There's no pleasure in it.
Right.
So why is it so taboo? Because it's so weird. right? Like you started feeling discomfort and you were doing things in secret. You were turning the volume down.
Right.
And we're not taught. That's the biggest thing for me is how can we teach children that whatever they're feeling inside their body when we start to have these conversations is natural? Because masturbation in children is so natural, right? And so like around 2 to 3 years old, like kids start to masturbate, especially young girls.
Really, that young?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just pleasurable,
right?
And it's allowing a release as well. And when they discover it, then it's like, oh, you know, want to do it all the time. And often it scares the parent so much that they make it wrong and bad and start shaming it right away.
Right. And I think for the kids, even when they discover it, it's very possible to immediately think that it's something they should be ashamed of because they've just associated pleasure with shame or pain in some way.
Exactly. So if we're already feeling all of that, to kind of shortcut the answer, because we could go on that for just an hour alone, but if we're already feeling all of that, then introduce as soon as we can escape ourselves in some way so that we can actually start doing this thing. We start putting drugs and alcohol into our body in order to express ourselves in a sexual way, in order to feel that pleasure, in order to do the weird things that we saw on TV or whatever on our phone, you know, like, and especially with the millennial generation and beyond who had so much access to things.
Right.
And I mean, I meet 10 and 11-year-olds who have already started to show their parts to one another on Snapchat and things like that. And it's like, oh my goodness, like, whoa, that's a lot.
Right.
And it's just so much more. So why is sober sex so weird? Why are we afraid to talk about it? Like, because no one really knows how to talk about it because people weren't really taught.
Right.
And then in the sober communities, there's all that conditioning of you're not supposed to, you're not supposed to, you're not supposed to, it's weird. And so then all the shit that goes on, you know, in secret, in private, all these patterns basically get repeated. And we see that in recovery spaces. You know, I can't tell you how many like married people were like, I'm like, I don't get it. Do y'all have rules around this? Because this doesn't feel appropriate unless you've had a conversation with your partner that this is appropriate. So all that shit goes on and like nobody's talking about it.
Right.
Or maybe it's not that nobody's talking about it. We're not talking about it enough.
Right. Or maybe not using the right language because we don't know how to.
Exactly. So like today we can talk about just getting the weird out. You know, sometimes I'm just like, we just gotta like get the weird out. Yeah, like, take it out. It's weird to talk about. And do you want to put your finger there?
Yes. It feels so much like it's so much more freeing and just it's fun and it's like exciting. And I don't know, I think that at some point we should all start talking about sex, whether it's sober, whether it's not sober, like, you know, that might be a stepping stone for people, but that's the only way that you're going to be able to like bust those myths that you've created around sex and sober sex until you start talking about it, until you start actually doing it. It's going to take hands-on experience.
Hands, tongues.
Yeah.
Vibrators, all the things, cuff, whatever you want, whatever you like, you know, it's like all the things it takes. You don't know it until you try it, and it's scary. And so, you know, and we're going to talk about this, like building this trust with yourself first, knowing what's okay, having that clear, concise, compassionate, cumulative conversation. You know, something that I remind people of often is like, because it was okay on Tuesday does not mean it was okay on Wednesday. And especially if there's any kind of trauma response, like there has to be communication. Do you like this? Do you want more of this? Is this okay today? I know we did it yesterday. So important. Do you still like to be kissed like that? I mean, the basics are even important.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that obviously, like you were saying, there's subconscious religious things in our head that kind of apply to a lot of this, and even culture, which is something we've discussed in the past, tells us how to do sex, how to do romance, how to do heartbreak. Culturally, alcohol and drugs are romanticized. Like in the movies, it looks so much fun. It looks like glamorous. The sex is amazing. Everybody's bodies are hot and everybody's high and nobody's going to rehab. And like, it's just like, you know, very easy to say like, wow, that looks like so much fun. That looks amazing. Like I want to do that. And it's connected alcohol and drugs with sex. So now it's kind of like, and then the bars, it's the go-to place. So it's like, I think that I would love to see like a survey of this, if it's not been done, of like how many people mostly have sex just fucked up. Because I feel like most people do.
100%. It's the majority.
That's wild.
Yeah, there are some studies out there about it. And I'm just laughing so hard because it's so true about no one's going to rehab.
No.
The other day I was watching a sad movie and they were like drinking and doing Molly and all this stuff for a breakup. And I was like, they're not even fucking stumbling. Their eyes are wide open. Like, this is so not true. This is
right.
how it happens.
Yeah.
And it does. It looks so glamorous and so fun. And when I think back to like when I started even using cocaine and sex, which was like a big part of my life, you know, like I wanted cocaine with every sexual experience. It was because it was glamorized so much. Absolutely. And it was, we called it the truth serum, right? It's like then all of this truth came out about what I really wanted. Right. But then, you know, for men, it's hard to get it up when they're on cocaine.
Yeah.
Like, this is so frustrating. Yeah. So, but it was glamorized. And so it's so, you know, I think talking about that in itself is freeing. Yeah. Like, oh, it was glamorized. And guess what, y'all? It can be that much fun without any substances, and more fun and more pleasurable because you're using your internal pharmacy.
Right. And
it's also going to create more long-term, just awesome recovery. Because if you know how to make those chemicals inside you, then you're not going to look outside yourself to, you know, go back out or go back to those behaviors, because you're like, oh, I don't need that. Like, I can do this within me.
Right. And even, I don't know if it's as typical for females as it is for males, but like, I can't get off when I'm fucked up. It's just, it doesn't happen for me. Probably because my body's on the verge of alcohol poisoning. So it's just like, oh, you want to come right now? You're about to die. Like, no. So, I mean, I can't even like enjoy sex when I'm fucked up.
Yeah. And let's talk about why that's true. So I'm going to get into a little neuroscience and chemistry because it's so important, right? So the drugs and the alcohol like are sledgehammers to all of the neurotransmitters that make sex fun and pleasurable that we create in our own bodies, that were given to us by the powers that be in the thing and the thing of wherever we come from.
Right.
Right. And if we're sledgehammering with the stimulant, with the alcohol, the GABA receptors, the dopamine, the norepinephrine, the valprosten, like none of that can really be activated and made in your body. And the liver and the gallbladder, the whole system is processing only the alcohol or the drug because it views it as poison in your body. So your body is on overdrive trying to get the shit out of you.
Right. And
you're having so much fun and you want to do all these things because you're trying to get like your bad out, as I say.
Yeah.
And you're like, your body's not cooperating with you. And that's confusing too.
Right.
So that brings up so much shame, so much guilt, so much trauma as well, because nothing happens there. And then the couple or the people that were trying to make it into this beautiful experience are frustrated with one another in the morning and hungover.
Yeah. Oh God. Awful.
Remember those days? Oh,
yeah. Awful. I would never, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Like, I do not want to ever feel that way again. But yeah. And then it's like also confusing because it's very possible that I was a blackout drinker through and through, like always missing parts or whole nights missing. But it's very easy to make a story around what happened. You could say, I had amazing sex last night, but you'd have no idea if you did. Or you can be like, that was awful and that was something I hated. But it just takes away your ability to be clear and I think truly enjoy the physical, spiritual, emotional connection at large. Like it just kind of steals that from you.
Totally. And these memories, these body responses. So here's the thing about blacking out that people often forget. And I, took me some time to really understand this as well. From a trauma perspective, the body keeps the score.
That's oh, wow. Okay.
So even if we don't have a recollection from the hippocampus to the memory that happened, something still happened. Like, you wake up with bruises in weird places. I had bruises in between my legs often, and I'd be like, fuck, what did I do last night? I don't remember. And obviously it was some kind of sexual something. Then you're sober. You're choosing the conscious sober lifestyle. You get to start touching someone and you feel a visceral response in your body that kind of goes into freeze mode.
Right.
And you don't know why it's happening, but the body remembers something. So can you communicate that to your partner? Like, ooh, right. I need to slow down and I have no idea why.
Right.
Right. So again, it goes back to that communication, and it could be something that happened that wasn't great while you were in a blackout.
Right.
You don't know. And I really want to just offer this, like, trying to figure it out is not worth it. Going to someone and saying like, oh, I'm having this somatic response, and coming to a practitioner like me or someone else who understands that work, then we can support you to get through it.
Right.
But making yourself wrong or bad or shameful, it's not wrong or bad or shameful. The body always knows.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. I never thought of that. And that makes so much sense, that like your body still remembers what happened even if your mind doesn't remember.
100.
Wow.
I know.
So assuming we do get to the point that we want to experiment with sober sex, what can we kind of do to prepare ourselves so that we're not setting ourselves up for failure, so to speak?
Totally. I mean, it's like, the body's responses to wanting to have sex are so strong. It's almost like overwhelmingly strong. You know how it goes from like 0 to 60? You're like, no, like all your clothes off, and they're just like, so let's just like be real about that. So it takes prior planning prevents poor performance. It takes some prior planning. It takes some like stepping back and going, I'm going to go for coffee with this person who makes me feel tingly all over my body. So can I tell this person right off the bat, like, you make me feel tingly?
Yeah.
I'm committed to not fucking you on the first date or whatever. Like, set some parameters, set some rules, get some support around it. Like, when we keep it totally a secret. And so how do you prepare yourself? You've got to like outline some limits for yourself. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to not do? One thing that the body's really tricky about is that we go back and our patterns choose the same thing. Even if that same thing wasn't working, we choose the same thing. So we're like, oh, here I am again with that person who totally isn't my type, who totally doesn't work for me, who kind of treats me badly.
Yeah. And
my pattern's just like running towards it.
Right.
So how can I interrupt that? So it takes
like the epitome of addiction. That's the epitome of it. It's like, this isn't working. It's actually causing negative consequences. However, I'm going to keep doing it.
Well, and like, let's take it from the trauma perspective. Is it addiction, or is it a pattern you created to survive until now that isn't working anymore? But it's so grooved in the brain that it's like, no one's teaching you how to do it different. And so that's why a plan of action. And sometimes y'all, like, let's just get real. The way that you start to develop a plan is by messing it up, by going and having some really raunchy, awful sex where you get, activated, you don't have a support network, you do all these things wrong, like hands on, right? I don't recommend doing that. Your pattern might take you there.
Right. Especially
for people that for it to get so painful before they change, and that's a pattern. It's totally a pattern. And I had to do a lot of healing around that for myself.
Right.
Because I was so fucking resilient that I had to get in so much pain before I was actually willing to change the pattern. And, you know, when I started really understanding trauma work, like 10 years ago plus, then I was like, wait, there has to be a different way in some of these things to start putting some kind of padding there.
Right.
So that I don't have to get in so much pain, that I don't have to suffer for so long.
Right.
So creating a plan for yourself is A-okay.
Yeah.
It's not weird. And then sharing your plan with someone that you trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes it might not be your sponsor. It
Right.
might not be, you know, someone from a recovery room. You might want to like level up your support there.
Agreed. I mean, it's kind of like that whole outside issues type thing. You know, your sponsor is meant to take you through the steps. That's it. They're not meant to, you know, give you sex advice, or although a lot still do, but consult somebody who maybe knows a little bit more about that kind of thing. No, it's not weird at all to have a plan for this kind of thing. And it's also a matter of the fact that you're asking the question at all. If you're thinking of that kind of thing, you're already in the right direction because you're already kind of planning. You're pre-planning.
Exactly. Yeah. And the plan includes, let's just talk a little bit about what does the plan include? Like what's okay with you? What's not okay with you? What is sex to you? Right. So
That's I think for like LGBT people too, especially because it's not necessarily penetration, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And what intimacy is to one person might be totally different than the other one, right? Like if just like lots of, I mean, you can orgasm through breast touch, right? So easily. So is it like, I know once I orgasm with someone, then I'm like, oh, so connected. Right? And I get connected pretty quickly with people. Like that's just how I'm built. And so the plan includes checking in with yourself on that. Like if I know that like I'm kind of like first kiss and I'm like, dang, I'm in, I either know or I don't know.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, if you touch me anywhere else, I'm gonna build a bond with you, which is gonna take me down this whole thing.
Right.
And so how can I be clear with you that you make me feel really tingly and I'm only interested in this?
Right.
With you. And is that okay with you? How do you feel about that? And you have to keep talking about it. This is not a one and done conversation.
Right. It's ongoing.
Yeah, because our patterns come up and our old stuff comes up. And so what is sex to you is such a great conversation. And it's just so true. Like penetration does not equal sex. It just doesn't. And so if you can really feel yourself getting flooded by all of the chemicals that our bodies make naturally so that we can experience the pleasure, it is really wise to talk about it. And I've shared this a number of times, but like I share it pretty quickly with someone. You know, like I have a friend when we're just friends, but like we are so attracted to each other. And we're just like really clear about it. Like, whoa, like you really make me feel some kind of way.
Right.
And we're friends. So like, how do we manage this?
Right.
And it's safe to do that. It's actually very safe to do that. So then I can have a badass friendship with him.
Yeah.
And, you know, still be like, wow, like I like your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
In terms of
having the conversation, yeah.
I feel pretty comfortable talking about sex openly with my partner. I've become very clear about what feels good and what doesn't, because I don't want to be there if it doesn't feel good, or if the other person doesn't feel good for that matter. Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. For me, it's talking during sex and then bringing the conversation before and after sex. During
that time, you have more access to like all of those amygdala types of just pleasure. I want pleasure conversation.
Right.
And so you're really asking for what you want when it's already in the act of.
I remember once, I don't remember who the partner was, but we talked about, you know, how would you define me sexually? Me and Petra do this a lot too. We have these intimacy cards that we do with each other, and a lot of them, one category is about sex, and I would definitely suggest those. I'll link them in the description. But I remember the girl had said like, well, you're really demanding. And I was like, I never thought of it as demanding. I just thought of it as conversational. It's like very talkative or very clear about what I want. So it's interesting to see how other people view it, because if you're not talking with them, you don't know how they see it.
Yeah, and I just want to applaud your parents, because even though it made you feel weird, like this is a direct result of what they were mirroring to you.
Right.
These are the things that we don't think about, you know, that's like that secure attachment that they were giving you to, where you're like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And then the other person has maybe been treated in some way that it's too direct, too clear, concise, and compassionate.
Yes. Yeah.
That they're like, this doesn't feel compassionate to me because of my shit. Mm-hmm. So then that means you have a conversation outside of the bedroom.
Right.
To be like, oh wow, I can really see you're struggling with some attachment patterns.
Yeah.
Like, only I say this shit, but like we want to teach y'all audience to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally told somebody yesterday who's just like a friend, I was like, we're healing your avoidant pattern right now.
What? Excuse me?
And he's like, I kind of get that. And I'm like, it's happening.
We say it now too. Like anytime either one of us say something after like watching these videos between you and I, we're like, I feel like you're really activated right now. Like, that's like our new thing. It's like, okay. Yeah. We have to like make like maybe like a little cheat sheet with like all of these terms, and then like layman's terms on the other side for like conversational tips for sex maybe.
That'd
I love
that.
Cool. Yeah.
Let's do that offline.
Okay, sure.
And make it into like a little PDF and give it
like
a freebie. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. That'd be badass. Yeah.
Absolutely. What are the benefits of trying sober sex with your partner? What aren't the benefits of trying sober sex with your partner? Might be a better question.
Yeah. I mean, there's just not, the benefits are true intimacy, right? The benefits are real healing, deep connection. And these words might be super scary to if you're listening. So, you know, like it takes wanting this and being willing to go down that black hole that we were talking about.
Right. And
to go into the bush.
No pun intended, I'm sure.
Oh gosh, I just had a visual. But you know, just like look around in there, it takes that level of surrender, takes that level of willingness, and the benefits are so worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I mean, continuing to live your life as an escape artist and live sober is that's suffering to me.
For sure.
Yeah. Sure. So, I mean, I think that I love how you just switched that around. Like, what aren't the benefits? Because they just can go on and on and on forever.
Yeah. And it's like, it really is a whole different animal. From my experiences, I've literally never had an orgasm under the influence of anything. Ever. And I almost always do sober. So it's like, if you are like that, if you're that person, I'm sure a lot of other things came into play, not just the fact that I was fucked up beyond belief, but for all you know, you might be able to unlock something that you were not able to unlock when you've been like burdened by all of these chemicals. The world is your oyster once you sober sex. Yeah.
It's so
if you're not a sober person, even if you're not in recovery, like even if you're a normal drinker, a recreational user, I think it's still super important for people to try it.
Yes. And so many women and men that I talk to that have been married for 20 plus years and drank most of their relationship, when they do have sex sober, they're like, holy shit. And all of the awkwardness comes up, and they've been married and intimate for 20 years.
That's scary to me. That's
scary. So even if you're not choosing a conscious sober lifestyle or whatever, like give it a whirl. It's so worth it to try it.
Yeah.
And explore and see what's possible.
Yeah, like if you're gonna get fucked up, do that for like, I don't know, the post office. Like stay sober for sex.
Yeah, and I think something that's interesting to talk about as well here is that, you know, maybe you haven't experienced a real orgasm.
Right.
You know, and that's however old you are, you know, especially as someone who identifies with the female gender, it's like, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay if you haven't. It's okay if you only get off to vibrators. My suggestion is always to try to slow things down, to start using your hands, to start exploring things with, just gentle touch, because it's very likely that there's been some kind of pain. There's all kinds of things that happen, especially with females, where there's literal biology that stops the orgasm from being able to be possible.
Wow.
And, leaning in here, asking questions, there's all kinds of toys and tools and devices and ways to open yourself up to that. Sometimes you're just blocked off from it and it literally hasn't opened to a way. So there's all kinds of things that you start slowly with support.
Yeah.
Start exploring, opening that part of your body up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, sometimes it's emotional.
Right.
You don't even realize it. And when you start to gently play with these things, then that opens everything up. And again, often we're getting fucked up because we know that there's no pleasure in it for us. And I know lots of women that have experienced this, who literally just have sex fucked up because there's something that's just not working there correctly, and they have so much shame about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, let's go to the sex store together. Like, let me show you some tools.
Yeah.
Because this can totally be corrected.
Yeah. You have the best job ever. Like, that's so much fun.
Yeah, it's funny. As a yoga teacher, years ago, when I was still out there drinking, I was already because I just was so comfortable with sex that I was like, let's go to the sex store together. Come on.
Right.
And so this has been something that I love to share about.
Yeah. So I don't even know if it's worth asking whether or not sober sex is still enjoyable, because clearly we've made it pretty obvious at this point that with the right components, that yes, of course it is still enjoyable. It can be more enjoyable, in fact. So kind of want to switch over to the follower questions. And this, I think, is a really big one, and probably something that a lot of people worry about, is sober sex awkward? And like, for me, yeah, and it's also amazing. Like, it can be awkward and awesome at the same time. Awkward doesn't necessarily mean that it's unenjoyable or bad or anything like that.
Sex is awkward no matter what.
Right. You're like smashing your genitals together. Like,
you're sweaty, you're making noises, air is coming out of your vagina, air is coming out of your asshole, like you're drooling on yourself because your mouth doesn't close.
Right.
You're spitting on things. Like, it's just awkward and weird.
Yep.
And all the noises. And you stink, I don't like to wear deodorant. Like, armpits start smelling a different way, especially I love the smell of people. When I'm attracted to them, I'm just like, oh God, the way you smell is just something.
Right.
And it's just weird and awkward.
Sure.
And so to just laugh, we don't laugh enough in the bedroom.
Sure.
Or wherever the hell you're doing it, right? It's like, giggle about it. It's weird. The weirdest shit happens. And if you like the butt, there's poop sometimes, and there's all kinds of weird things that happen.
For sure.
And the more awkward, the better.
Almost all my gay guy friends have just been like, I've had to have this conversation, and I'm just like, dude, I commend you for being able to talk about that and openly. It's tough. It's tough to do it, but it's for me, I just say embrace the awkward.
Oh yeah, embrace the awkward, and then learn what feels right for you.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's ways to clear your, colon before you have anal sex, and especially for bacteria, it's a really important thing to keep in mind.
Right.
And when you're fucked up, you're not keeping that in mind, and so women will often end up with yeast infections and all kinds of weird bacterial infections, and I'm like, girl, quit doing it when you're fucked up, because
avoidable.
It's going in your vagina. Stop it.
Yeah, it's avoidable.
It's avoidable, and it's awkward as fuck.
Right.
So it's embracing the awkward. Again, it's asking for support. It's talking about how awkward it is. It's also asking your partner, like, if you do have more air in your body and you're, like farting and making noises, and just like asking your partner to not be awkward when that happens.
Right.
Because if they do it, then you might tense up. And then an orgasm's impossible or really hard to get back to once you get activated in that way.
Right. Have that same open communication style about even the super awkward stuff. So that when it happens, especially the super awkward stuff. Yeah. And it's like, when it comes to even, telling your partner that you do want to try sober sex, which is the next question that we have from a follower, is how to tell your partner you want to give it a try. Like, maybe that's something that you kind of bring up. Like, hey, I do want to give this a shot, but I'm a little bit worried about A, B, and C. But what would you say that their best plan of action would be for? I think it also depends on, you can't make your partner have sober sex. Like, you can ask them to, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to say, sure, you can agree to be sober.
Totally. So, yeah. And I mean, it comes down to being, in a healthy relationship, and being willing to have these conversations. Because if your partner isn't willing to, and I mean, I'm thinking, I'm just having people run through my head right now who are actually in the situation, like now. And it sucks, because if the partner is not willing to, then that's a whole nother video. Because then it becomes like, oh gosh, my needs aren't getting met here. Yeah. And I guarantee your needs aren't getting met in other places as well. Right. So it's just,
and that hurts to hear that. I can only be influenced to have sex. Like, that hurts to hear.
Yeah. And definitely if the person's willing, getting someone involved, getting some support. Because in every relationship, there's your partner, two entities, and then there's the relationship. Right. And this is affecting you and the relationship and your partner. And sometimes it's just, you've got to get some support, because the two of you are not going to solve this problem or this obstacle to overcome.
Absolutely. And since a lot of people do, I guess, feel insecure about having sex in general, probably, but especially sober sex, somebody wants to know how you can work on feeling less insecure during sober sex. My immediate thing that came to my head was fake it till you make it, but like, I don't know if that's good advice.
Well, I don't believe in like faking it. However, I do believe in practicing it.
Well, fake it. Don't fake the orgasms. I feel like fake feeling, kind of like try to embody a feeling of security and then see if it manifests itself, rather than you just take over on this one.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And it's, how do you get your nervous system on board? Right? So there's the thoughts help. The nervous system still's got to get there, right? Yeah. And so I highly, highly, highly suggest playing with yourself as much as possible, right? Like, play with yourself.
And so,
it's
go for it.
Yeah, like, just, explore things, do things, and see what you like and what you don't like. And, explore your pranayama, your breath. Breath is such a big thing. I remember I was with a guy who, like, years of it being built up, and then we were both single, and so we were like, and he was like, I was breathing so hard, and he was like, slow your breath down, like yoga teacher. And I was like, okay, sorry. But I was just so excited to be with him,
right,
that I was like not gonna enjoy it. And then thank God I did it, because then it was like so pleasurable,
right?
And so it's like, practice your breath while you're by yourself. You can masturbate in like all kinds of places, areas, and just see what you like and what you don't like, and don't only leave it to the experience and the result of having an orgasm.
That's
right.
One for sure.
That's a great way to just explore. Like, I love to just get myself almost there and then use that energy to create. So I was celibate for 2 years on purpose,
Yeah.
So I have a yoni egg practice. I've got like crystal practices. I've got like all kinds of different practices to stimulate that. What do I like? What do I not like? What's new for me?
Right.
All those things.
Yeah, I think that that's such a big part of it, because a lot of the insecurity might be tied to, am I going to have an orgasm? So if you take that pressure away from it from the beginning, then it's kind of like you're giving yourself a pass to not have to at least worry about that. And it's so ingrained to just feel like you need to reach some sort of climax. But it's not necessarily true. It's about enjoying each moment throughout it. So
deeply.
Yeah.
Fuck patriarchy. You know, the result is not, it's not that. The result is like, oh God, they're so pleasurable.
Like a
slow burn.
Yeah, for sure. These questions came from your followers, if you want to read those.
Oh, right. Yes. So someone asked, and this comes in many different forms. So it was particularly, I haven't had sex in 3 years and I'm terrified.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing that I just, first of all, like, what work have you done to prepare yourself for this?
Right.
Because just kind of staying in that space and going, only repeating the old patterns and the old behaviors and all the old pain without getting to a healing place, then when you do go to have sex, you're probably going to re-terrify yourself.
Yeah.
So get some support as to why it's been so long. Like, I was so conscious of my celibacy when I stepped into it, you know, like, I am doing this thing on purpose with lots of energy, with lots of support, and with lots of exploration to do it. And again, if you're just waiting because you're scared and you're terrified, and then you're just in that fear response, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
And like, one thing that I see a lot of is that in that time, a lot of really like hardcore porn is being watched. And that's flooding. That's a sledgehammer, the same sledgehammer as drugs and alcohol to the neurotransmitters and the feel goodness. And it's just unrealistic to think that sex is actually like that.
Of course.
So, especially for males who like women, like, you know, really touch base with yourself of what you've been doing to fulfill that need. And if it's just kind of building up more anger, resentment, all those patterns and behaviors that have led you to not be in a relationship for so long. And y'all, we heal in relationships. So if you choose not to do it for the rest of your life, awesome. Like, make that choice and own it.
Yeah.
If you want it and you're just sitting on all those feelings, get some support.
For sure.
And then this last question is so good, and people think it all the time, like, is it okay to crave sex? And, you know, again, it goes back to that reaction versus response. It goes back to that pattern of like, are you craving sex just to like get that orgasm in and just, okay, I feel better, I feel different?
Yeah.
Or are you just a natural freaking human being? We are designed to crave sex. We are designed, especially as women, to make babies.
Right.
Like, our bodies are, that's what they're designed to do, is to make more humans.
Right.
So like, it's very natural. And if the craving isn't there, then that's a whole nother thing. So the thing is yes, it's okay. And check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yeah.
Because you will wreck yourself with these emotions swimming around with no container to hold them in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like goes back to that, that we're judging ourselves a little bit. Like, is this okay? You know, like, yeah, of course it is. Like, we have to ask for permission if it's okay for me to feel this way. Is it okay for me to crave this thing? And like, as you're saying, it's just as natural as breathing.
It's as natural as breathing. And I really love ending kind of on this, what you just said, because this is the whole thing. The last 4 episodes that we've been talking about have been all about permission that only you can give to yourself. I just get all kinds of feelings, because as someone who chooses a sober lifestyle, maybe you've heard that you can't trust yourself, that you're not wise, that you made all these mistakes, and maybe it's conditioned into you from forever, from childhood, from intergenerational trauma, all the things. And all of the things that we've been talking about are give yourself permission to have a healthy relationship, to grieve heartbreak, to freaking explore and have pleasure, to do all these things and do it sober.
Yes.
And it takes you giving yourself permission.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a perfect way to like cap off this whole thing. I've really loved having these conversations. Hopefully we can do more in the future too about other topics. And I just know that there's like a world of things that we can dive into and explore together. So I'm really excited about that. And guys, please, by all means, like Amy is here to help you with these specific things. Like the lady knows her stuff. So if you see yourself being like, that's me, like throughout any of these videos, like reach out to her and see what's up, you know? And in the meantime, also subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with a couple of friends, somebody that you think it might be helpful to, and, you know, spread the love.
Yes. Thank you so much. I just adore you and look forward to more. There will be more.
Absolutely. All right, Amy.